Welcome to Florida Newsmakers. I'm Tramel Gomes with our very special guest, Susan MacManus, political science professor at the University of South Florida. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Should be fun.
All right. Well, let's get right into it. With Election Day just a few days away, certainly this has been the nastiest and most expensive race in Florida's history. What do you make of it so far?
Not only has it been the nastiest and the most expensive, but the longest. And it's the oversaturation of negativity and the TV ads, which seem to the average person just looking at the ads themselves, that they seem to cancel each other out. That's what's really troubling to a lot of people and raising among some analysts the question about, will that tamp down turnout? So it is really the length of this campaign as well as the nastiest and the money that's really kind of alienating a lot of Floridians.
What do you think, we're asking you to go into your crystal ball, what will the outcome be between these two candidates?
Well, I don't know if my crystal ball is too clear on that front. Right now, it could go either direction, and it seems very, very trite to say that it's all about turnout for the next week and a half, but it definitely is. There are so many people that haven't even made up their minds about whether to vote, let alone who to vote for. So you've really got to work hard to get your base out, and then you've got to expand that to include the no party affiliation and just the voters who are kind of undecided. Right now, Democrats have three base elements that they really need to turn out at a higher rate than they did in the presidential. Turn out at a higher rate than in 2010. And midterm fall off is usually most intense among younger voters, minorities, and then, so you have younger voters, African Americans and Hispanics, and women, young women especially. But it looks like the turnout efforts now, the get out the vote efforts of the Chris campaign, particularly among the African American base, is more intense than it was in 2010. And I would say equal with the Scott campaign on Hispanics. And younger women, well, all of the ads have been aimed at younger women on the reproductive rights issues. The question is whether that will actually get young voters and young women to the polls or not, that issue alone.
So in looking at Governor Rick Scott and his challenger, Charlie Crist, will this race, the governor's race, how will this affect the other races on the cabinet seats, the other cabinet races that we're seeing in the state?
Well, normally you say that people can sort of, or tend to split their tickets, pick based on people that they know or like or whatever, not necessarily party. But because Florida is so polarized now, what we're seeing is more of a tendency of people to vote a straight ticket all the way down from the top to the bottom. And some of the fortunes of the Democratic cabinet candidates are obviously very closely tied to Governor Crist. Now, the Scott campaign on the other side, its get out the vote efforts are really counting on the fact that the enthusiasm among Republicans for voting is much higher. And traditionally, they have a higher turnout rate than do Democrats. But I can tell you right now, they're both absolutely leaving no stone unturned and trying to reach every single voter, because this is definitely a flip a coin race right now.
Yeah. One of the other issues, or big issue on the ballot, will not just be these candidates, but the amendments. And the big one on there that people will be looking for is Amendment 2, dealing with medical marijuana. What's your prediction of how this will unfold?
It looks like it's on a downward trend, and most of the more recent polls have shown that it's under the 60% threshold. Initially, it polled high in the 80s. Most people didn't think that was ever going to hold up. But also they didn't anticipate how much money would be put into ads on the opposing side. So much money initially was put into getting the signatures and getting the amendment on the ballot that people thought, well, that's the end of that, it'll easily pass. But then you have a wealthy gentleman from Nevada who puts in another $3 or $4 million to the anti-side. And plus you're also seeing a lot more coverage of what's happening with legalized marijuana out west, and it's started to create a little bit of doubt and erode away on the support for it. So I would be surprised if it passes, and I don't think it's actually going to be the huge turnout driver for college students that was initially thought. We had a straw poll on USF campus. We're the only university in the state that does this routinely, and even there, just 70% said that they would vote for it. So it's not quite what it everyone thought it was initially.
On the congressional front, we have the big race here in North Florida. The entire nation is, watching to see how this will impact in Washington between Gwen Graham and Steve Sutherland. What's your prediction there?
Again, a very, very tight race. Most interesting one, in my judgment, in the whole state. Who would have thought North Florida? But what you have here is a sort of a prelude to what we can expect in the 2016 presidential race, where you have urban voters versus the more suburban and rural voters. This particular district has many of the elements that will be used to actually campaign in 2016, whomever is the nominee for each side. You'll see it right here. Right now, if the urban vote is heavier turnout, then it'll be Graham. If the rural vote and suburban vote's a little bit higher, it'll be Sutherland. Take your pick.
Depending on who gets the governor's seat, what will a 2015 session look like, in your opinion?
Depending on who gets it, they will certainly be trying to shore up some of the budget decisions that they don't like to do in an election year. They kind of delay some of that. We'll see how the economy is going, how much money is available, but I think you're surely to see some issues, particularly in the education arena, on Common Core and testing. It's a hot issue right now in a lot of state legislative races. It really wasn't talked much about in the gubernatorial debates, which I was rather surprised about because it is a very burning issue that people are philosophically divided on.
All right. Well, Susan MacManus, thank you so much for taking time to spend here on our program, and we certainly hope to have you back in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And to our viewers, thanks for joining us.